since, as you'll be aware, yesterday Mr Johnson, the British Prime Minister, invited me to talks in London, and I'm keen to inform the House of this. I took the Prime Minister the position agreed by the European Parliament at its last plenary sitting on Brexit. Despite having expressed a certain degree of faith and hope, I have to note that not much progress appears to have been made. This morning, I also had a fruitful discussion with Speaker Bercow, which I set out my view that any request by British institutions for an extension of, or any prorogation of Parliament, should allow the British people to give its views, whether it be in a referendum or a general election. Speaker Bercow and I were very much on the same wavelength regarding the importance of the roles of our respective parliaments in managing Brexit. And we share an awareness that a chaotic exit of the United Kingdom from the European Union would work to the detriment of citizens on both sides. I do trust that no deal can be avoided at the end of the day. Thank you. Mr Lucy from the unattached members, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much for the floor. Let me make this very clear, Mr Sassoli. You have no right to go and speak with the UK Speaker, having conversations that are directly interfering into our domestic politics. It exposes your intentions to intervene at all levels to stop Brexit. It is immoral. Shame on you. And Mr Barnier, I note throughout your speech, sir, you kept referring to the British negotiators as just British. We are the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that will never change. Brexit was not a rejection of Europe or our wonderful European friends. It was a rejection of the anti-democratic nature of EU institutions, and you confirm to us every day it was right to leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I want in fact to start by responding to Mrs de Lucy, who is attacking here this parliament, saying that we are undemocratic, while they are here elected here, and they are not elected in the British Parliament. So who is more democratic, you think? Who is more democratic? In your own country, neither the UKIP, before or Brexit, has one representative in the British Parliament. And here, where you have more than, I don't know, too much representatives, you're saying that we are not democratic. Crazy is this. But that said, I will be less diplomatic than Michel Barnier. I think that the proposal that Boris Johnson exactly 1 week ago has put forward was not serious at all, dear colleagues. Not serious at all, because it was in fact, I call it a virtual proposal. It was not a real proposal. It gives in fact a veto to the DUP in a number of issues. It is putting custom facilities, not on the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic, but in all the other parts of the island of Ireland that we don't know yet. And finally, the proposal is to downgrade the political declaration and the future relationship by undercutting, in fact, by making a sort of Singapore at the sea, at the North Sea, like they like there behind me, these 20, but by in fact destroying the ecological, social and labour standards. And I have to tell that to Richard Corbett, because he's a Labour representative. I can never understand that today there are 20 or so Labour MPs thinking to vote together with the government of the UK for such a deal. That should be the contrary of all the things that Labour has always defended in the past. And okay, I hope that it is not happening. But the real reason why this is all happening is very simple. It's a blame game. A blame game against everybody. A blame game against the Union, against Ireland, against Mrs Merkel, against the British judicial system, against Labour, against the Lib Dems, even against Mrs May. The only who is not be blamed is Mr Johnson himself, apparently. But all the rest are the source of our problems. That is what is happening today. And all those who are not playing his game are traitors, or a collaborator, or surrenders? Well, in my opinion, dear colleagues, the real traitor is he or she who risks bringing disaster upon his country, its economy and its citizens by pushing Britain out of the European Union. That's, in my opinion, a traitor.
Mr. Verhofstadt, you have provoked two colleagues who have blue card questions. Only two.
Dad, I would like to ask you why you don't respect democracy. You claim to respect democracy. You just said you don't think that the Labour Party should be allowed to vote with our Conservative Party. Why not? That is their democratic right. And do you remember how you opposed the fact that Turkey wanted to throw a new election because you didn't agree with the first one, yet you want us to throw a second referendum in the UK? Mr. Verhofstadt, you do not believe in democracy, except when it suits you and except when you win. And when you lose, as you did at the European referendum, at the Brexit referendum, you just don't like it, do you? I'm afraid you've lost, my friend. Goodbye.
The mic appears not to be working.
Democracy, you can change your mind. And I have this... no? Yeah. And I have only a small impression. I have a small impression that in the meanwhile, the majority of the British citizens have changed their mind.
Sorry, colleagues. Please listen to the answer and try not to holler. There's no need for it. Mr. Corbett, I think in fairness I will ask, will you accept a question, Mr. Verhofstadt? You're in demand.
Like
Mr.
always.
Corbett.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Democracy.
30 seconds.
Curiously, Madam President, Mr. Verhofstadt asked me a question during his speech about a small number of Labour MPs who've written to President Tusk urging a deal and compromise, which they might vote for. Not this deal by Mr. Johnson. But another way to stop Mr. Johnson, of course, would be to vote no confidence in the House of Commons and put Jeremy Corbyn in number 10. But it's the Liberal Democrats who are opposed to that. They say they'll do anything to stop Brexit, but they won't even put Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street as a temporary government.
I'm sorry, Mr. Corbett, it wasn't a question. I'm not sure, Mr. Verhofstadt, can you make a question out of a statement?
Make it into a question, but I don't think that it is in this House that we have to discuss the internal affairs of the Labour Party and the British Parliament.
Okay, you have succeeded in irritating both sides of the House, Mr. Verhofstadt, so it's a balance. Although I have to say, as I said, indeed, that was my remark, incredibly balanced. So calm down to my right, please. Thank you. Mr. Farage for 1 minute.
We are not dealing with people acting in good faith. Yes, that means you, Mr. Barnier. You're not looking for solutions. You're looking to put obstacles in our way. You may have conned a very weak and gullible Mrs. May into signing up into a new treaty from which there was no escape, but you're not conning us. We don't want your treaty in any form, even with Mr. Johnson's proposed amendments. The referendum was very clear. We voted to leave the institutions of the European Union and to be free. And you know, we've had enough of being talked down to by you, insulted by Messrs. Tusk and indeed Juncker. And we will never accept a German Chancellor attempting to annex a part of our nation. We simply won't have it. The good news is your wretched treaty is off the table, support for a clean break Brexit is growing, and it will be the winning ticket at the next general election.
I didn't think we were discussing the UK's next general election. I thought we were discussing Brexit. You have, of course, provoked some reaction from colleagues. Will you accept blue card question? Ms. Bunting.
Am I on? Hi. Yes, the country voted, the UK voted to leave the EU. But they didn't know what they were voting on, and they were misled. They were.
Could you ask a question? I don't want a statement. I'm really sorry. I need a question.
Yes, I would like Nigel Farage to account for why he stood in front of that poster with refugees that had nothing to do with European Union. I would like to ask why they supported erroneous statistics and inaccurate facts. They know
Your time
they
is
have
up, madam. It is 30 seconds. I have two other colleagues who want to ask questions, and I'm going to allow it even though we are over. So, Mr. Farage, will you answer that, please?
You patronising, snuck-up snob. How dare you? How dare you tell people
Okay, look,
they
Mr.
didn't
Farage.
know what they were voting
Mr.
for?
Farage,
They knew
please.
exactly what they were voting for. They were voting against 50 years of people like you lying to them. They did it, you promised, you'd enact it, and you, the Lib Dems and others, have betrayed the greatest democratic exercise in the history of our nation.
Let that settle for a moment. Just let that settle. Can I just say, I am taking a decision not to put two more questions to Mr. Farage. I think it's the correct decision.